Welcome to the Inside Pitch. I'm Christopher Lockhart, the creator and administrator of this private Facebook group where screenwriters, creators, filmmakers meet to ask and answer questions and exchange ideas and information on the craft and business of movie making. I do not administer this Facebook group by myself. I'm helped by Steve Enlow and also by Ramesh Santanam, who is also our co-host for these live events.
Hey everyone. Hey Chris.
Good day. It's a little later where you are, a little earlier.
Yeah, it's 1:10.
All right. So yeah, we get a bit of a late start. I'd like to help people find these these streams. They seem to have a hard time, or sometimes it seems like servers pick it up a little bit later. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah, this is at least what I have been instructed. So we had a very great panel. Was it last week, the week before last?
Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
With the script consultants, and that was very popular. So today we are meeting with a local, meaning he happens to be a member of the Inside Pitch, but he's also a filmmaker. And what a film he has made.
I know.
We have both had the pleasure to see it. And Ramesh, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about
Our guest is Evan Marlowe, a screenwriter and director, as well as an author who publishes under the name E. Stuart Marlowe. He lives in Southern California with his wife, Kerry, who is a producer and actor raised in the United Kingdom. And he has made a new film called Abruptio, and here is the trailer for it.
My name is Les Hackle. I'm 35, live with my parents, and was recently dumped by my girlfriend. It's all right. She had issues. And there's a bomb in my neck. I have no idea how it got there, but if I don't follow their commands, they say it'll go off. I just need to stay alive long enough to figure this out, to find out who's behind it. My name is Les Hackle, and I have a bomb in my neck. Just like everyone else.
So if you thought you were high on drugs, I mean, you very well might be, but Abruptio certainly has that illusion. So let's bring on our guest.
Yes.
Mr. Evan Marlowe.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, Evan.
Hey.
Hi, how you doing?
Nice to see you. Of course, you and I met very recently. Evan was very kind enough to invite me and my son to a screening of Abruptio.
That's right.
And after seeing it, I was like, oh, we definitely need to talk to him.
Yeah. Someone needs to talk
gotta find out, because this is a movie that that I can only imagine sort of you're starting out with it like, okay, wow, like this is a really cool, interesting idea. But production had to have been a nightmare. I mean, you had to have been constantly encountering production issues that you never thought about. It just seems so daunting, especially for what I'm going to assume is a fairly small crew, a fairly small budget. But so why don't you just tell us first and foremost where this idea came from? Was it conceived with the idea of puppets, or did you just come up with sort of this high concept idea of a person with a bomb in his head having to fulfill kind of a list of tasks or else, and then come up with the puppets? So what was the evolution here?
Well, if you'd asked me 7 or 8 years ago when I wrote the script, I probably would have a really crystal clear memory of it. But it's been so long that I just don't even remember where all this kind of happened, or in what order. But I think the idea was we'd get some good actors in the sound booth, and then we just, we could capture their voice, and then we could hold on to that forever while we spent as much time as we needed producing this thing. And the only way to do that would be to to create puppets, which, as the years went on, I just kept kicking myself, realizing what a bad idea that was. But eventually the point is that I had this idea to do it with life-size realistic puppets, and I needed something in the script thematically to motivate that. So I needed to then work in something where your protagonist is being manipulated at first externally, but then eventually internally by his psyche, to behave certain ways. So hopefully it's not just a gimmick that we have puppets, that the whole thing kind of works by the end.
Yeah, and there, without giving anything away, there is a very specific reason why you're using puppets here, and that's part of the narrative. The puppets look great. Yes, Ramesh? Don't you think the puppets look really great? You're on mute.
Yeah, the puppets are great. They're awesome, and it's it's puppet noir is what I'm calling it.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is, and maybe even a little bit of puppet torture porn.
Yes, yes. Oh, it's got violence. It's got nudity. It's got everything.
It's a little grisly in spots, even though it's puppets being fed into the wood chipper. It's still pretty grisly. And
that's literal grindhouse.
Literal grindhouse.
Yeah.
And all right. So you recorded the voices, and you've got people on the soundtrack: Jordan Peele, Sid Haig, Christopher McDonald, Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund, and
James Marsters,
right, from
and Hannah Mae Lee. Yeah.
Right, and so you recorded all those voices like years before the movie was made?
Well, sometimes before, sometimes concurrently. As we went along and the budget allowed, we said, okay, now we can film these scenes. Let's get an actor and do the voice, and then we'll go about dedicating the next year or two to doing these few scenes. So it just kind of happened as budget allowed, I think.
And can I ask the budget? Am I allowed to do that?
I think it's somewhere between $500 and $600.
Okay. And how long was production?
Well, like I said, it's on and off, largely because of COVID, but also
Right.
budgetary. Well, the good thing about puppets is they don't need to wear masks, so that whole testing thing was not an issue. Although our skeleton crew still needed to abide by all those rules, but it did make life a little easier when you didn't have living actors to film.
But you're using puppeteers, of course.
Yes. Well, we had essentially we had some trial and error to find the right puppeteer, but eventually we settled on one puppeteer, and he did 90% of the work here throughout the movie. So it was just one.
So even in scenes when there's more than one puppet?
Well, if there's two in one scene talking, then I would CGI that. I would do one puppet and then green screen and then CGI the other. Or if it's just a shoulder and over the shoulder, that's easy enough for my wife to hold the other puppet. But yes, if there are single shots, then he would be doing all of them himself.
Did you storyboard this in advance, and were you considering these? Let me ask this first. What sort of challenges did you encounter that were unexpected? And this could be a very long list, but
it's very. I mean, I don't even know where to start. First of all, we wanted to shoot it in real world settings. Some of them it's soundstage and things like that, but most of it was just houses and cars. And the well of a car is not big enough to put in, and our puppeteer is very big. He's like 6 feet, I think. But he's very flexible and he's got incredible endurance. So he could cram himself into any position. But I mean, for me, that's not a big deal. But obviously for him to hold that position for an hour was really difficult. And we'd have to be just imaginative. We couldn't, carve holes in the floors like they do and things like that, and have them go underneath and puppeteer that way. We just had to work with the environment that we had and make it realistic. And there might have been a couple shots where I sort of CGI'd him out of the shot, but just because we had to for like wide shots. But generally speaking, we didn't do that. We just had to have him contort himself so he was not visible in the shot and could still provide a nuanced performance. But also, you know, when you deal with actors, you don't have to worry about their eye line. You know, they're generally looking, they're able to control their eyes. But with puppets, we just hope that their eye line's the same from shot to shot. That's one thing. But you know, we're dealing with a professional puppeteer. That really wasn't even an issue. If it was one of, you know, us trying to do it, forget it. And then the other thing is the puppet was, you know, sometimes it would drift up and down between shots because it was heavy. So I realized I had to create a PVC frame to put the head on so that it would consistently be in the same spot in every shot. But you know, all that was just trial and error. We just kept going on figuring out, you know, we didn't need to make it so heavy. We could make it more lightweight. We could create that, you know, that framework and things like that. Just there was no book we could read to help, you know, figure out how to do this. We just stumbled along over the years.
And I'm assuming, of course, that you didn't just have one puppet for each character.
No.
I mean, right? You know,
Right.
You would need to have others.
No, every character was unique. We have a fabricator, Jeff Farley, who we'd send designs, or I'd go online and find references for him, and he would come up with something, and then he would fabricate it by himself. You know, so this was really a very, very small crew that worked on this movie. It was one fabricator. John Sellings in England provided whatever visual effects there was, plus grading, you know, color grading and correction himself. And then I did most of the technical stuff on the set. Fortunately, everything was, you know, without audio, so I didn't even have to worry about that. Other than the puppeteer would lip sync to the voice track, so I would have to have that on loop out of my iPad, and he would, you know, so that was the only audio, so I had to record that, so I make sure that synced up well, and then me editing it, and that was it. My wife provided production; she's a producer, so she provided, you know, the set design. We worked on the costumes together and that sort of thing. But it was, I mean, essentially, it's just the four of us, and then the two composers that made this movie.
Wow.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah, and like, you know, there's a lot of work. It's just, it's although it all feels seamless and effortless, I just think anybody that's ever made a movie would understand immediately that, oh my God, this just must have been a Herculean task.
Yeah.
Any mishaps with the puppets, like, you know, heads ripping, you know, mouths falling off, or, you know, where you need to make another one
Yeah. Well, you know, there's a scene at the end at the amusement park, and everything that could go wrong went wrong there. We spent, I think, 3 days. I asked my wife, and it was so long ago, we don't even remember. We kind of had to shoot that just in case the part became unavailable for whatever reason. So it was one of the earlier scenes we shot. And it went from brutal heat one day where I almost passed out to flash flood the next day. And then we had just, you know, rats and things like that around. So it was pretty bad, but the elements kind of got to one of the puppets. It started to misbehave, and then we went to another scene, you know, months later, and it was just having problems. So I had to send it back to the fabricator to kind of fix it up a bit. But generally speaking, they held together really well, especially the main character, who was in it for years. We used the same head for years. Well, I think we had another head. Maybe we had two, and a stunt head that we could throw around. But generally speaking, these held together remarkably well. And now they're all in storage, and so they're all really happy and retired off in an air-conditioned place.
And in terms of the screenplay, did you write a conventional screenplay? It was just a screenplay, and
I did. Now, the screenplay originally was much bigger because I assumed we'd go to people and say, hey, we got this great puppet movie, give us some financing, and they all laughed us out of the room.
Did they?
They just, you know, this sort of thing, nobody can really envision it or what the market is for it. There's no comparable movie. I mean, you can't say Dark Crystal, but that's not really similar.
There was the Melissa McCarthy movie that sort of spoofed the Muppets, and but yet it had a live actress in it, and a fairly big one at that, and in terms of A-list.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay. And you know, I don't need to be canceled.
Yeah.
But you know, they were Muppets.
Yeah.
For the most part, you know, that's what they look like. Your puppets, there's like a humanity to them, even though they're also sort of scary and kind of a little bit grotesque, maybe, but they just look so good. So when you were pitching this did you have mock-ups of what the puppets might look like? And so what did that pitch look like when you went out and said, hey, I want to make a movie with puppets?
Yeah, first we didn't have anything. So I sort of did a mock-up with one of the heads in a dark room. And I went to AFM with that, and it was like, yeah, come back to us when you're like 95% done with the movie, and we'll step in with a little bit of financing and take over the whole thing. So, people were really interested. They just didn't want to put money into it, and we didn't have any. So eventually we got to the point we did have some really good scenes, and we went out again, and they still just couldn't figure out how this would work with the slate that they had. It just didn't fit in with all the in horror. It just doesn't fit in with anything when they're going out to markets and stuff. And it's not, it's not elevated enough, I guess, to for bigger, like, I don't know, A24 or whatever. I just don't know. I don't know what people are looking for, or what's marketable these days. I don't think anyone knows, but I sure know they didn't want to take a chance on puppets. So in an adult space, not, in a cutesy space, I guess that'd be fine. But this is completely different. So eventually you just have to bite the bullet and just forge ahead with the movie and do it yourself, and try to, friends and family to help out. And definitely, like, you keep the crew small. You can call on your friends to help out. We had a guy named Dickie that's my right-hand man that was a friend of ours and helped out pretty much just about everything on set that needed to be done. And things like that. And our actors, a lot of the actors that we brought in were friends of ours. So, just because my wife is so sociable, not me personally, but she's very sociable and from England, and she's got a big circle of friends from England, and they'd have to be very loyal. It was relatively easy to bring in people and get a lot of stuff done that I think we couldn't have done at a studio level.
So is that how you literally raised the money?
Most of it was self-financed.
Crowdfund?
We did Indiegogo. I don't think we raised a whole lot there. So it was really pretty much self-financed and just kind of waiting to earn that money and then put it into the movie.
And have you, what's the distribution look like?
I want it to get the widest distribution possible, so I'm kind of waiting, and I think it will eventually get the interest of those people. But right now I want to build the buzz and the credibility and go out to the film festivals, and it is doing that. It has done. It's got a lot of positive reviews. The festivals are coming to us to show the film, so I think it's doing what I need it to do. I just need to probably wait until October or November again, or whenever the run is over, and then reapproach distribution. Unless someone comes to us and says, well, we want to take it up, that'd be fine.
It seems like it'd be a perfect midnight movie, for places like Toronto, or and a lot of those midnight movies go on to find distribution, and I mean, this is certainly a cult film, at the very least, that this will end up with a cult following.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
which is great. But yeah, it's a scary world out there in terms of trying to find a place for a movie, trying to get your money back.
Right.
And you certainly didn't spend a lot of money, although $500,000 is certainly a lot of money to most people that are watching this. And but I like the idea that you just did it yourself. So did you have other features before this?
Yeah, we had two films that my wife wrote. The first was Blood Rush, which is, to give you a sense of it, that's the poster for it. That's okay. The wife with a shovel, bloody shovel. That was we just wrote it on the fly. It got distribution. And then the second one was an anthology called Horror House, with Lloyd Kaufman as the guy introducing each of the shorts. And that one I think was really good. Those both got distributed, and that was it. And then we went on hiatus because of this. So we've just been taking all this time to make this movie.
Right. And how'd this experience compare to the other two features?
I think it was comparable when you're dealing with just a very, very small crew. I mean, it definitely was a lot more learning in the first two features, which I applied to this one. It was definitely easier coming into the third feature, having gone through two, and really being insistent on having the images look really good and knowing how to bring that about without having the whole crew. You had to light it all yourself and all that, but knowing how to do that quickly and settling on good shots, and knowing what you can and can't do. And now the caveat being these are puppets. There's a lot you can't do. You can't do a wide shot and then, you know, dolly in. And I did it on occasion, but it's hard to do. There's a lot more flexibility with live actors. But, you know, as far as what you can do on this budget with this range, I found you could do quite a bit. And people, the whole thing was, this is an experiment to see if people could even become engaged in the film and the story with these characters. So I didn't even know from day to day whether this would even work in the end. So you just treat these puppets like they're actors, and you just go about your business making the movie.
And in terms of your background, did you start as a director? Did you start as a screenwriter?
I started as a little boy who loved Star Wars in the 70s, who bought Star Wars action figures, and my dad got me a camera, a Super 8 camera, and I animated the action figures, and then graduated to claymation, and then graduated to live actors, and then added sound, and started a film club at Calabasas High School. I called it the Cinematic Society or some pretentious name like that. But that's what I did. We had a little fundraiser, and we made little short films. And then I did a little bit in college, and then put it on hold. And then my wife, who's, you know, a producer from England, she went to film school in England. I married her, and then she got me a cheap camera, a digital camera, and we started making movies again. But I started as a director, and then I talked to an agent a long time ago, not at your agency. And he said, well, really, we want someone that's kind of can write also. So if you can market yourself as a writer-director, it makes things a little easier. Mm-hmm. I said, that sounds like a good idea. I probably could do that. So I started working on it. And then I started working not just scripts, but books and, you know, novels and short stories. And so it just kind of, it works better for me because I can get my own ideas out. I have to, you know, it's nice to rely on other people for ideas. Yeah. But it's also a good idea to have your own store of ideas you can pull from.
Did you graduate from Calabasas High School?
Yes.
What year did you graduate?
87.
87. You're a baby. I have a friend who graduated there. I think she graduated 89. She graduated. So you guys were at the school at the same time. So it's interesting in regards to sort of starting out animating Star Wars figures and then doing claymation. It's almost sort of feels like that a movie with puppets could kind of be a natural progression from that in some ways.
Yes. But also, I think I grew up, but also hard. I'd say I grew up for some reason or somehow I got my hands on films that probably kids shouldn't be watching at that age. And
like
we had video stores back then. Well, you know, like a lot of the video nasties, I Spit on Your Grave, Blood-Sucking Freaks, A Clockwork Orange. And plus, my mom accidentally took us to see Alien when it was in the theater. And the guy at the ticker counter said, you know, there's some scary stuff in there, but I'll come back and get you before it starts. And he never showed up again. And me and my friends were terrified and hiding behind the seats. And I think that was the beginning, because it's sort of like a thing where you'd never want to go through that again, but then you become addicted to it, that sensation. So I think that kind of triggered my whole love of horror to begin with. But also over the years, just becoming interested in people that push the boundaries in general, just not just horror, but in all genres that bring new things to the table. And I think any successful director will probably want to also expand beyond the genre they work in, just to see what else is going on in the world.
Right. And, you know, this is certainly you could certainly describe this movie that way, you know. It's certainly, and our members are dropping in other movies. Somebody mentioned the Team America movie, you know, which was puppets, and but you've never seen puppets like this. There's just something that, you know, you all saw the trailer, so there's just something that's wholly unique about these puppets, and the fact that each one of them is such an individual character. You know, like I love the bald guy. I mean, God, that is such a great. I mean, just such a great look. That's such a good looking puppet.
Which one's that? The dumb cop for?
He's the
Jeep
bald
Wreckers?
guy.
Is he- Oh, Clive.
The bad guy, Clive. Right?
Clive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The British
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, that's like such a good looking puppet. I thought.
Yeah, he's great.
Man. And I met somebody at the screening I spoke to. I can't think of his name offhand. The man with the beard, who I think did some of. You're looking at me like who?
Well, I think it was Jeff, maybe the fabricator.
He was a fabricator. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, Jeff Farley.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
again, it's the sort of thing where I don't think he ever made puppets. Maybe he made a couple, but nothing like this. He does like, things, aliens and stuff you might need for a movie, probably
Right.
prosthetics and stuff like that. So I came to him, and he's been around forever, so he knows the ins and outs, and he said, "Sure, I can do that." So we were all kind of just flying blind with this thing, hoping it'll work. And unfortunately, I just surrounded myself with enough talented people and got lucky that it did, I think, work in the end. But you just don't know. You just don't know if this thing's going to have legs and be able. It's sort of a Frankenstein monster by the end of it. You don't know if it's going to come together and tell a coherent story, and people are going to care about looking at these things, these inanimate objects, for an hour and a half.
So every now and then you hear a filmmaker. I think when we interviewed Christopher McQuarrie, right, Ramesh, didn't he tell people that they should just go out and make their own movies?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I think that's often easier said than done for a lot of reasons, because you don't have the resources, maybe you don't have the talent. But I guess that's kind of what you're doing. Yes, you're like, okay, like this, like I'm not going to wait for people to make my movie. I'm just going to make it myself.
Yeah, I don't think I could have gone in any room and pitched this thing, and I think, okay, well, here you go, here's $1 million. I just don't think that would have worked. You kind of have to put it together because, I mean, people just can't visualize what it is like you can. Like you've got it in your head, you've held it in your head for years, so you really know what's going on here. And it's as best as you can. It's really hard to express that unless you actually see it. Now you look at the movie, you kind of watch it, and I think most people kind of get that. Some people just don't get it and don't want anything to do with it, which I can't blame them. But I think it's definitely easy. But in hindsight, no, it was hard to go out and do that and get people on board and get them excited. Even with this cast, I mean, you would think, and with this concept, it was really, really hard. So you just kind of keep inching along, till you get to the finish line as best you can.
And it's interesting too, because, and Ramesh, I don't know how you would feel about this, but reading it as a screenplay, it just, and maybe understanding that the roles are being played by puppets, I just don't think that it would have the kind of impact that it has as an actual visual experience, because the script does, in not the entire thing, because it is very Lynchian, but yet there is absolutely a high concept idea at its center, and there's some pretty harrowing scenes in it, that are really tense and scary. And while those would play on the page, you still might be asking, well, like, why puppets? Why puppets? Yeah. And even when it becomes clear why it's puppets, I still think that on the page, that might fall flat, as opposed to it being that visual experience that you really need in order for that to really hit the way it hits you in the revelation. How do you feel about that, Ramesh?
Actually, absolutely. And the other thing I realized when I was watching this film, and I was watching it, and I was thinking about the script. And even if I read puppet script. I just read a puppet script.
Look at this, Evan. You're just.
I've opened the floodgates.
Blazing the trail. You have.
God help us all.
But I would never. If I had read this before I had seen this, the chances are I would not have envisioned in my mind the puppets looking the way they did in the movie, which is fantastic.
Yeah, good point. I would even say that if you were going to send out a script like this, that it would behoove you to put the visuals actually in the script,
right.
Even if they're just drawings.
Right, saying this is how they look, because in my mind, if I had seen puppets, I would have had like
You might be
imagine maybe
thinking of like Ernie and Bert.
or Pinocchio,
yeah.
Pinocchio, or something like
Right.
that, as
Yeah.
opposed to this. The first time I saw it, like, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a visual experience,
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's possibly because I started off as a filmmaker and also write because as I'm writing something, I'm visualizing it, and maybe it doesn't work on the page so well, but in my head, I'm going, all right, well, just hang in there with me. I think this is going to work visually, and I don't know if every screenwriter has the ability, but they should try to visualize it, see it as a movie in their head as they're writing it or after they've written it.
Sure.
And then try to also pitch that. I mean, visually, because what's on the page sometimes just doesn't do the idea justice.
Right, right. And I would say that is most certainly the case here, more so than a lot of scripts that I've read. So maybe most, maybe all. So congratulations, and
Thank you.
yeah. So yeah, I could totally understand that uphill climb that you would have trying to convince people.
Yeah.
And so then you make it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, that's a really big undertaking. Did you ever say, something, maybe we should just sort of push this aside and do something more conventional? Or
No,
you were
once
really,
you get started,
yeah,
you're kind of
yeah.
digging your grave. You just have to keep digging, and hopefully you'll see daylight at the other end. But you just can't stop. I mean, once you get yourself, I mean, you kind of should just say, all right, well, this was a nice little experiment, but then also you kind of get obsessed with the idea. And I think any film director, I mean, you work on the set, and it's just hell. It's a horrible experience to actually make a movie. It's physically and psychically it's difficult. But when you're not doing it, you feel awful. You really want to get back on set to do it, and because it's just what you love and it's in your blood. So I think it was kind of the same thing with this. Like, oh no, this really is a good idea, and I would like to see it, and I think other people would like to see it. So I kind of have this obligation to finish it off.
So I want to say hello to our members who are chiming in, and
we have some questions.
Really?
Yes.
Hey, we have people from Croatia here today.
Oh.
Look at this! Wow. All right, Ramesh, why don't you share a question or two?
Okay. Chris Rogers wants to know why puppets versus live actors.
Well, yeah, it's hard to say without giving away the whole point of the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the story does work. You could work it essentially with live actors.
Yeah.
As a noir film.
You could
Right.
could if you had a different conceit.
Yes.
In regards to why the puppets exist.
Yes.
And
right.
Absolutely could. But yeah, let me just say for Evan that there is a very specific reason. And because, when you're watching the movie, you most certainly ask that question.
Right.
You're like, God, why the fuck did he want to use puppets? Oh my God, what was he thinking? But yeah, it all makes sense in the end.
Right.
So
in the final few frames of the movie, it makes sense.
Right.
Yes. In literally a blink of an eye.
Yes.
In a blink of an eye.
You blink, you miss it. They miss the whole point.
Yeah, I thought that was very effective. By the way, my son loved this movie. He did. In fact, I told him that I was going to be talking to you. He was like, "Oh, I love that movie. I love that movie." He's corrupted. And
what other stuff does he like? Just as comparison.
No, his favorite movie of all time is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he has good taste.
Oddly enough. And his tastes are far more elevated than mine. He's much smarter than me. And but I did not tell him that there were puppets in the movie. I just pitched the bomb in the head thing, and he's like,
"Oh
wow,
my God,
that sounds really cool." I was like, "Oh, just wait and see."
Yeah.
He looked over at me, and he was but then he just sat back. He had just this big grin on his face through the whole movie. He was just like, "Wow, that was so weird."
Yeah.
And and he loved it. I mean, again, it's like, you know, I tell people all the time, if you're going to do something that people are going to remember.
Right.
You know, it's like I meet these filmmakers that want to make these short films all the time. And it's, you know, and it's two people in a room, you know, talking about something. And I'm like, God, like we've seen that a million times. And unless you're going to bring some kind of filmmaking experience that we have never seen before, you know, like it might be great for you to make that movie to sort of get your feet wet or just to be able to work in your craft. But if you think it's going to advance you around the board, it's probably not. You need to do something that people are going to remember, you know?
Right. This film, I'll say, no matter how many other films I see after this year, this will be hands down one of the most memorable films I've seen.
I mean, it's just, you know, visually, it is so compelling, you know, and it's just, and again, you know, the scene with, I don't want to give anything away, but, you know, the scene with our hero and the Sid Haig character, I believe it's the Sid Haig character, in the house with the mother, the father, and the daughter. I mean, that's a really scary, tense scene. That's something that like Tarantino would put in a movie, right?
Yeah.
Except he just wouldn't use puppets.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, he might now.
He might now. Who knows? Anything else, Ramesh?
Yeah. How many puppets were created for production? Janet wants to know.
Well, I mean, every character. So, God, how many was that? I probably would say about a dozen or so, but I can't even remember. I'd have to go through and count. But I would assume something like a dozen characters in this thing. There were some minor things like, you know, like the girl that gets hit and the girl that works in the office. They don't talk, and so those were kind of prefabricated. I got from a store that used to be in Southern California but moved out of state. Cadaver. And so I just use those just for those static shots. I use them, but they're only on the screen for a few seconds. But anyone that was speaking, I'd have to make a new one from scratch. And then I had, for some of these, I had to make matching masks for an actor, a body double for wide shots, which happened occasionally. So there was also masks made for some of the characters.
Wow.
How did you go about getting these actors to voice? Because what was that
some
process?
of them,
like Jordan Peele, for example.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
I mean, he's at the top of his game, right? Why does he need to do voiceover?
Well, at the time, this was before Get Out came out. This was way before everyone knew him as a horror director. He was a comedy guy. He was a major in puppetry in college, so he had an interest in that.
Oh,
interesting. He came in that way. Sarah Lawrence, I think is the name of the college. He came in that way just as an interest in puppetry, but also obviously an interest in horror, which we didn't know. He had that in his back pocket. Like months later, he had Get Out released.
How did you approach Jordan Peele?
I'm not sure. You know, with everyone, we go through their agent or the rep.
Did you use a casting director?
No, we don't have a casting. We just went out. Directly to their agents. My wife is a voice actor, and her agent shares. I think she shares an agent with some of these. Maybe Chris McDonald, for example, Robert Englund. I can't remember exactly. So that was some of the introduction there. But with like James Marsters, I think he was kind of put off by the script, and he was really hesitant to do it, which I don't blame him. But he circled back because he just thought of the idea of doing it with lifelike puppets. And I think Robert Englund, same thing. He was intrigued by the idea of doing it, and he just said it was been an interesting experiment to see how far we can push things. What we can get away with. And still for people to be engaged with it. So I think the idea of the lifelike puppets was the big reason why a lot of these actors came on board.
Interesting. Yeah, because even, I mean, someone asked, is graphic violence easier to experience in animation versus real life? It's still tough to experience it in your film. I mean, because you sort of invest in these people.
Well, someone mentioned Team America and all that, and those are movies that treat their puppets like puppets.
Right.
And they're kind of winking at us and saying, these are puppets. Let's see them have sex and that sort of thing. But
right.
I wasn't doing that with this movie. I was treating them like people. I'm just going to treat them like actors and beat them up and see if I feel that they're, humans, then will other people feel that way too.
Right.
I think you can kind of feel that in the movie. The just my intent was to just treat them like real people, and it works, I think, because it is uncomfortable. It could have easily not worked, and people would have just sat there going, "Oh, that just looks fake." So you just don't know. But in the end, I think that was possibly the reason. Plus, also, everyone keeps bringing up this uncanny valley thing, and what that is if you I guess this is whether it's an actual thing that exists or it's just a theory. But if you make something, if you replicate a human being and make it look really 100% realistic, the more realistic it is, the more people have empathize with it and connect with it. But there's a point where you're almost 100%, but you're not quite there, and you dip, you get this valley, and people suddenly become very disconcerted by this character until it get back to 100% authenticity, and then they engage with it again. So I think I was taking advantage, because I always told the fabricator, make it about 80% lifelike, 80% lifelike, and then just give me about 20%, like smooth out the skin in different areas, make it just a little bit puppety. And so I think I kind of took advantage of that uncanny valley to make people uncomfortable, but still engage with the character. I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but that was kind of think what I was doing with that.
I love
because I'm sorry, Ramesh.
No, I love the doctor's face.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, the thing is that no matter how sort of real the puppets feel or look, there's still an obvious surreal quality to the whole thing, because you're watching puppets, and it's just, and again, these, I would say these are puppets that we just haven't seen before.
Right.
And when you shared the trailer on the page a few months ago, Evan, I was just immediately taken aback. I was just like, oh my God, this just appeals to that sort of, grindhouse kid in me. It's just something that's so weird. It's like, I'll go to Tubi late at night and just search for those really weird horror movies that, like nobody's ever heard of. And the weirder, the better.
Yeah.
But again, this does have, as I keep saying, a very high concept pitch.
Right.
To it.
As far as the bomb or the puppet?
As the bomb in
right.
the head,
Right.
I mean, that's an easy pitch, right? I mean, it's a really, really easy pitch to anybody.
I love low concept stuff, but I love high concept stuff. I mean, I just love high concept. So a lot of stuff I won't even write unless I get that high concept idea in it, whether it's a novel or a script. I go, oh, that's really cool, but I can't really sum it up in like a sentence and go, get everyone's eyes to light up. And if I can't get that for myself, I just kind of like put it aside. So I always do try to find, the high concept ideas. But that said, I really love, chill movies that don't have concepts and are just, sometimes just people exploring different emotions. I love those too.
You sort of do hear what Christopher Nolan does with Memento, right? Where, it is a very, very high concept idea that is delivered in, an offbeat, more sort of indie kind of fashion, so you get kind of both of those sensibilities here. And then of course
with Memento, I don't know, you can tell me, but I wouldn't even know if that movie would work if it was made chronologically. Memento. I just don't even know. It would just be a movie.
It would be a movie that probably wouldn't have stayed with people, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, probably the same thing with your movie, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah.
It's like, but again, like that's the hook of your movie.
Yeah.
That's the brilliance of it, I think, is just, that it's like, we're just going to make this with like really cool looking puppets.
I actually think the one of the DVD features on Memento is that you can watch it chronologically.
Oh God.
Really? Oh,
yes, I've never watched
I just don't think it would work well. I mean, it'd still be a good movie, but I don't think it would have the hook.
Yeah, again, it's the it's that sort of it's the way the story is told. Structure, certainly can give a movie a unique quality. its
But
own fingerprint.
at the end of the day, I think Nolan was doing that because it helped the story. He wasn't just doing it as a gimmick.
Right.
The same for the puppets in this movie. I'm just not just doing puppets. It's the point. There's a point to it,
There's
and
a
I
point
think you have to have that hook that is motivated by the story in some
Yes.
way. They have to work together organically, or it's just
Right.
obviously a gimmick.
Right. Well, again, it's like I kept asking myself as I was watching the movie, why puppets, why puppets, why puppets? And just like Chris asked the same
Right.
question, and he's only seen the trailer.
Right.
And if we didn't understand that by the end of the movie, perhaps some people then would have kind of scratched their heads.
And I've read some reviews where they just still don't get it, even by the end of the movie. Some of them just,
maybe they blinked.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
That's when they reach down for the popcorn and
Yeah. Ooh, bad timing.
Although there's an explanation coming,
Right.
I mean, so it's there, even if you miss the visual, it's still there.
Yeah.
Whatever, Look, critics are critics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
P
Go ahead,
wants
Ramesh.
P wants to know about your pre-visual process. Did you use animatics or computer-based storyboarding or old-fashioned storyboards?
So what I do is when I write a script and I'm reading it, I will jot in the margins, the shots that I think will work, and then I'll transpose those onto index cards. And I'm such a bad artist, and you look at some of my storyboards, but I don't have any here, but they're really, really bad. Stick figures, but it's enough for me to understand what I want. And then I put them in a clear, plastic thing. I slip them in, and then I number them and all that, and it becomes what I work off of. That's the extent of it. So I think first of all, as I am reading the script, to really just not get anything in my way, just sit there and just start jotting out how I'm seeing it onto the page, on the actual script, and then go through all that, and then put those into their individual shots. Then of course you do a shot list when you actually make the movie, because you don't want to have to keep moving the camera unnecessarily, and do all this shot, and you do the turnaround and do this shot. So that's where having an efficient shot list comes in place, so that when you show up on the day, and it's hard enough with real actors, you get everything done efficiently. When you got puppets, you really have to have everything planned down to the T. I love spontaneity on set, but you're just not going to get that. You're not going to get that much out of a puppet or a puppeteer. And you don't want that much when this kind of thing, and everything has to be really controlled, and you have to know exactly what you're going to be doing from minute to minute. Plus, at this budget range, you get that set for one day and you're done, and you can't come back and do reshoots. So you really have to have everything done, exactly what you want done in advance. And that would probably be my approach in general, because then if you've ever worked with live actors again, they kind of can just relax and do their job, and you're not running around frantically trying to shoot the movie. You've got everything sorted out technically, so that you can just let their performers do what they need to do.
Thank you.
And P wants to know, how did using puppets affect lighting and camera movement plans?
Well, not so much the lighting. I did what I could. If I had a grip and gaffer and all that, I'm sure it would have made it look so much better. But the problem with a big crew is everybody wants to then do a good job, and it takes that much more time to make the movie. Whereas I'm very old school, Roger Corman, just get in, make the movie, and get out, get the shots. Part of that is you have to set up the shots well. You can't just get anything and make it sloppy, out of focus, that sort of thing. But when you start bringing in other crew members, they all generally want to do a competent job, and that it does look better, but it also takes a lot more time, and then you wind up having to spend more money. You have to come back a second day. So I kind of almost prefer doing a lot of this stuff myself, the lighting and the camera work. As far as camera movements, I did want to add some dolly shots and cranes and things like that, but you're really kind of limited what you can do with puppets. You pull back too far, you see the puppeteer. There's times where I'll do a wide shot, and I'll have a body double with a mask, so you can get away with some of that. But there's only so much you can do when you've got puppets. So then you have to not rely so much on camera motion and rely more on the performance and other interesting things like that to keep people watching your movie.
Did you shoot in LA, by the way?
Yeah, primarily we shot. We're in Orange County, so we shot here, Los Angeles, San Diego for that. The fairground thing. Pretty primarily around here. Yeah, so that's Southern California.
Member wants to know, what do you hope viewers will take away from your movie? What is the ultimate message you tried to share, if anything?
I mean, I tend not to like to discuss that sort of thing because as I'm reading these reviews, I'm learning a lot about the movie. So I just kind of put it out there, and then I don't want to kind of taint people's experience by providing my own opinions. So I just generally, I mean, I just, but overriding thing would be like, it's okay to push the boundaries and make weird things. And actually probably having looking at what's come out, people that do that change, that do things that are crazy, like Fury Road and Everything Everywhere, it's okay. They're actually financially successful to do that. You don't have to follow the same formula. It's okay to do strange things, and people you'll probably find a market for it.
Someone wants to know, how does animation affect foreign sales, where the market value of the voice cast might be lessened because of the dubbing? Is that something you've...
Yeah, that was pointed out to us on our first trip to AFM. That
very good question. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Somebody said that. I love that. I love this cast, but you do realize this is all going to be dubbed in when it goes to foreign, and it's irrelevant who you've signed onto your movie. So maybe Christopher could answer more of that. But that was pointed out to us, and another reason why they didn't want to pick up the film.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and of course, you could always get the Jordan Peele of Belgium to voice it. I see one here. Does the gimmick work? I don't know if we kind of covered this already. Does the gimmick work to keep your viewer slightly out of the story, reacting more cerebral than visceral by intention?
I don't really think there is a cerebral response. I mean, I don't know, because I'm so in it that I can't really look at this objectively. But I think mostly this is visceral. I just think there's too much going on that's just too weird. And the brain, the first time through, can't really even comprehend what it's looking at. And I guess you kind of expect real people to show up at some point in the movie, and they don't. And I just think you're on your heels for most of this movie. So I just think you're reacting to it viscerally for almost the entire duration, but maybe you'd have a better, fresher view about it.
I don't know. I mean,
the dog is real.
The dog, yeah, the animals are real.
I mean, it certainly plays a little bit, on a cerebral level. But yeah, I mean, the movie's just very shocking. I mean, that's just sort of the way to explain it. It's very shocking. And not necessarily because it's violent but it's just that, when a puppet comes on and again, I do think that sort of the brilliance of it was that it's, as you've already mentioned, Evan, is that it's not meta. This isn't a puppet movie that's aware that it's a puppet movie. And so, we are, it's sort of like if you're watching a Disney animated movie, like that's the world. Right. They're not cartoons. Right. But yet, as you pointed out, often when we see these movies now, that they are indeed sort of holding a mirror up to themselves and or using puppets in a way that is so outrageous that we laugh at it, like, in that Melissa McCarthy movie, there are puppets that ejaculate and it's pretty nasty. And you wouldn't think it was funny if it was like a real man doing it, but the fact that it's puppets and they kind of look like Muppets, so that takes it to a completely other level where it's kind of just
irreverent
and making a mockery of our childhood, even, and where this is just like you just accept, And by the way, you accept it pretty quickly. You know, once you realize, okay, this is a movie with all puppets, then you just sort of sit back and go, okay, you know, like, I'm here.
Right. It's
Well,
it's a thriller told with puppets, with very human-like puppets, is what.
That's why the first act is kind of slow and low key. I just wanted to kind of gradually get people into it. I don't want to shock people. It's just too much. So I just, you know, it drags a little at the beginning purposely because I just wanted to kind of introduce this world. People kind of get used to being in this world first because it's just so different. And then I shift gears, you know, once people are kind of accepting of it.
Right. Plus our protagonist doesn't really have the most exciting life anyway.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Right. You know, so there's a juxtaposition there. You've mentioned the critics a couple of times. So what have they said? And I can assume that this movie is most certainly being looked at by, you know, like the horror websites, you know, I would assume, you know, I made a horror movie. And so I remember that, you know, it's like you had all of those, I can't even remember any of the website, but, you know, there's like Dirty, Rotten, I Spit on Your Grave website, or, you know, this or that. And
Dread Central and Bloody Disgusting. And,
yeah, those are them. Exactly right. And of course, you know, that's the audience for this film too, right? You know, I mean, those are the kinds of people that are going to love this kind of movie just because it's because it's something that they have not seen before. So are those websites embracing it?
Yeah. Was Dread Central did a positive review on it. I don't think I got any. I did get a lot of reviews from smaller websites, but none of the major ones yet. So I guess that'll come with time. But yeah, I think generally speaking, I'd say 90% of the reviews have been very positive. There have been a few, like I said, just don't get the idea. The ending is off-putting for a lot of people. They don't think. I mean, they just want to see that, you know, I guess a horror ending or something that they expect. But everything in this movie is carefully constructed to lead you to the ending that is there. So, and maybe the first time through you don't get that, but the second time you should start seeing all the little subtle hints and clues that are telling you where we're going. But I think first time through you just kind of expect something else, and people find it underwhelming. But I mean, I just can't even think of another ending that would have worked as well. So I mean, that was the whole point of making this movie, was for that.
Yeah. So did you start with that?
No, I mean start with the ending. No,
Yeah.
I don't know. It all just kind of came in a rush, and I think it's just like with anything, you just get these little bursts of inspiration, and you know, somewhere along the line, I said, and it must have happened early because I filmed the actual actor early on, so I must have known right, you know, pretty close to the beginning that this is how I wanted it to conclude. And so, you know, things come to you and go, wow, that's a good idea, let's just do that. But I think that idea kind of happened very early on.
Because I would think that you would perhaps ask the question that everybody's asking, which is why puppets?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I don't know, it's how my brain works. It just kind of, I just let my subconscious kind of lead most of the time. I don't really process a lot of stuff. And then at a later date, my higher brain goes, oh, all right, well, that makes sense. But I think a lot of what I do is just kind of like getting my brain out of the way and letting myself just tell the story from my gut. And then it, you know, I think generally that works for me. It just kind of, everything kind of falls in place. If you just kind of trust your instincts, or my instincts, and then you can tweak it a little bit in the end, make the dialogue snappier and stuff like that. But I think the first things you have to listen, you have to trust your instincts, and you have to have good instincts. And I think that the people that do that generally make the best art.
How long did it take?
Can you explain the title? I'm sorry, Ramesh.
No, go ahead.
Can you explain the title?
Well, it's a medical term where a placenta disconnects from the uterus prematurely. So again, without giving anything away about the story, I kind of feel like that kind of reflects the whole premise of the movie.
And how did you even know about?
I have a medical background. I'm a doctor.
Oh, you do? Oh,
yeah.
Are Are you like a doctor or something? What kind of medical background?
Doctor, yeah, MD.
You're kidding me.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, how do you leave that? Ramesh, we're the world's worst interviewers. I mean, how do we have sort of left?
My doctor makes movies too, by the way.
I keep those worlds separate, and I try to hide them on the internet separately. So far,
okay. No, I can totally respect that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really that's okay. Okay. Wow. but very cool though. You know, very no. It's like I kind of love that because again, I know that so many of our members do other things, and I mean, are you like actually a doctor now? You know, I mean,
yes.
Like, okay.
You have. I mean, you have to do other things. I mean, most of us can't just do this full time and make a good living at it. It's just not possible. So you have to do other things. You have to accept that you're going to have a full-time job, or something that will pay you very high rent or mortgage in California, and then try to do this in the meantime. Try to get this off the ground. People, I think that do that are probably more satisfied in the end because they can just kind of chill out and make their best work, and they're not. You don't have this desperation to try to like sell your script.
But still, it's like. I mean, I'm assuming, and I don't want to stereotype, but I mean, I would assume that as a doctor, you're fairly busy. I mean, I don't know, maybe you're like a podiatrist or something, but or like a fucking chiropractor. But you're not a chiropractor, are you?
No.
Okay. And
or a podiatrist.
Then whatever.
But there's busy podiatrists, busy chiropractors.
My ex-wife's a chiropractor. But what kind of doctor are you? Am I allowed to ask?
Yeah, well, I do physical medicine. It's a specialty of medicine where you treat like sprains and strains and that sort of thing. Mostly work comp these days.
Okay, cool. But still, that sounds like it's a fairly consuming job, and I mean, it's a doctor, right? So,
yeah.
But yet you still find the time to make a movie.
Yeah. Well, over 6 or 7 years.
Okay, but still, you made a movie, And
yeah, and actually, the work is busy, but having 3 kids is probably even more time consuming. So yeah, I'm doing all this stuff. But what you do is, you take an hour off on your lunch break and sit in your car and write a script, or a story. You just find times. There's plenty of times where I just couldn't sleep at 2 a.m, went in the TV room and wrote. Or edited, you just carve out some time in your schedule, and you're exhausted during the day, but at least you get that off your chest. You're able to do that because you just can't live your life for your career unless you're doing something that you're absolutely passionate about, like filmmaking. If you're fortunate enough to do that full time, great. But you just need to find passions in life and pursue them any way you can.
I mean, what a great lesson. Somebody asked, is he a script doctor? But what, it's like there's just, by the way, I'm so glad that you didn't keep that secret, because it's like, I mean, there's no excuses for people, right? I mean, people can really make the time. People can really do what it is that they want to do. You have a full-time job, you're married, you have 3 children. And yet you're making films. Mm-hmm. So you can do it.
Well, yeah. And you could say, well, it's expensive, but there's nowadays, especially, there's ways to make films that aren't expensive. If you've got a very good idea and you've got a very good script and you've got I mean, it's LA, I live in LA. I mean, it's not hard to throw a stone and hit an actor. You can, there's plenty of good actors around. So you should be able to make a movie for not much money, and definitely you can put it up on YouTube. It's just it's easier now than ever to make something and get it online and have people see it. It's just a question of whether it's good or not. If you make something that's well done and it's different. I mean, I think it's important. Even if it's a great film, it might not find an audience, but if it's different enough and it's different, then you might have an easier time finding an audience for it.
Somebody wrote, Evan can twist your arm to get his movie greenlit, then fix your arm for free.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to twist anyone's arm to get this movie made.
Which is amazing, but yet you still did it, and you never said, I can just fall back on, my day job, and I still have my wife who loves me and my kids who support me, but you did it. I mean, I have I have a lot of respect for that, Evan. I really do. I have a lot of respect for that.
Thank you. Yeah. No, that would be too sad for me to give up on things like that. It just, even if no one sees the movie at the end of the day, I think I just felt like I needed to make the movie, you know. And I think that's how I want to. Any project I get into, I want to feel that way. Whether it's a book or a movie, I want to feel like I just have to do this. I have to see it to completion. Otherwise, I just don't even bother starting it.
Ramesh,
how long did it take you to write the script?
Again, I don't even remember. I think
it's literally been so long.
So long. I mean, I think most of the scripts I write or wrote in the past, they happen pretty quickly. It's the rewrites that take a lot of time, and I think I did tweak a lot over the course of years. I did have one script doctor look at it, just to give me, and a phone call with it, just to kind of give me some good ideas about things that could have improved it, punched it up a little bit. And I think that's important, being able to take, you know, some feedback from people that you trust. And then, but after that, I just kind of sat with it for a while, and then you cast somebody, and then you rewrite the dialogue for that actor. So that happened quite a bit too.
Makes sense. Somebody wrote, "Puppets are brilliant." Oh, it was P.
Hi, Pete.
He wrote, "Puppets are brilliant. A character fall without being pushed at $600 to the insurance bill. Every fall. Being pushed doubles that. Yay for puppets." There's
No comment.
definitely some truth to that, right? So you know, there's the whole thing about never work with children and animals. Do you have that view with puppets, or would you?
Yeah, I would add puppets to that.
You would, okay. You would definitely. So you would never make a puppet movie again.
No, they say never, but yeah,
Right.
No, never. No,
What
but I
if
mean,
what if this movie took off, right? You know, it became like a Terrifier 2. It took off, and then somebody said, "We need a sequel."
No, I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I just would want to know why I'm making another puppet movie. What's the story about? I mean, it's clear in this movie. Why would I make another puppet movie? Is it going to be the same reveal at the end? I mean, does that make any sense? I mean, I would probably do, like, I'm working on an alien invasion story right now, and I could see that maybe doing, you know, because I love, you know, practical effects, and I could see doing that instead. But I just can't see this kind of movie being made again unless I had a really good reason for it.
Right. Ramesh, anything else?
Can you talk a little bit about the other thing where you write books, you write novels?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, it's a lot easier to write and publish a novel than it is to get a film produced. So I just say, oh, this would be a great idea for a movie, but and some of these I have written a script, but then I'll just turn that into a book. It's just, you know, I mean, and then most of my books take about a year to write because there's so much research. There's a lot of stuff that's, I mean, medieval or it's dystopian future where you have to do a lot of research. And so a lot of that just takes time to get it all accurate, to the feel of it to be accurate. So, but that way you've kind of really fleshed out the world and the characters, and not all of that would, you know, as we know, doesn't make a good movie, but at least it's a starting point. You have a good concept and you've seen it through, and maybe there's some threads that you do want to pursue cinematically and some that just won't work. But at least you've put it all out there on the table so you can have stuff to choose from. And I've done that. I mean, every year or so, I've written a new book, maybe sometimes more. There was one year I think I published 2 books and maybe a few screenplays online on Amazon. So there's, you know, I think that's something to do if you find you're having difficulty getting your scripts produced. Just spend some time developing the craft of writing, so at least you have some avenue to put your ideas on paper.
Did you start out first as a screenwriter or first as a novelist?
I think I started when I was little. I remember writing little short stories, but that doesn't really count. And I did write screenplays first, and then I think it kind of it just dawned on me that it was just so hard just getting, you know, email responses on my scripts. So just, you know, just write them out into a novel form. And fortunately, the first one I wrote was Menagerie, and that was picked up quickly by a publisher. It did really well, and I was able to join the Horror Writers Association with just the first novel. And then I wrote they wanted a follow-up. And then, you know, this publisher, Severed Press, really likes kaiju and stuff like that, big creatures and things like that. So I did a kaiju novel, but I just threw that one really quickly together, and it wasn't very popular. And after that, I was like, I just want to write other stuff and self-publish. So, and I always pitch these ideas, but I guess there's a certain thing that they're looking for, a certain type of writers that they're looking for these days, these publishing houses or whoever I'm going out to, agencies. And I guess what I'm writing is just not filling that niche, so they're not generally interested. Everyone's really courteous in the literary world, but I haven't been able to snag any deals that way. So I just self-publish. Fortunately, we have Amazon, and I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it just because I have a great idea. I just want to see it through to fruition and then put it online. No, most people tend to like the stuff I'm writing. I have a very small following.
But you seem to have a very big creative appetite.
I do, yeah, and I always have, yeah.
Yeah, and so like when you were in college, did you pursue filmmaking at all? I mean, and then say, I'm going to be a doctor. I mean, like, how does that work?
Well, it was always the plan to be a doctor, but it's so time consuming to prepare to be one. You just can't. Sometimes you just can't even take a weekend off to make anything. So for those years, it's really hard. I tried a little bit, but you also need to know people that are interested and aren't flaky. So it was hard. So I just let it go for a while. But I turned to making music.
In school. You
What's
didn't
that?
study film in school. You didn't study film in school.
No, I never studied film. My studies from film are, renting DVDs and watching the commentary or reading Pauline Kael or Roger Ebert.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, and just really sitting there and analyzing how movies were made.
Wow.
Just seeing the shot choices and things like that, and paying attention to dialogue and reading some books. But that's basically my film school. I'm not even sure how much you learn from film school versus doing it that route, which gives you a better education.
Sure. Wow. Anything else, Ramesh?
Yeah. Is prose writing easier than scripts, or is the collaboration on scripts easier than doing the whole writing of a novel on your own?
Well, I think I mentioned I was a songwriter too, and songwriting, you have to really be succinct. You have to find the right words, and they have to rhyme. So it trains you to just be very efficient with your words. And I think scripts are similar to that. You have to get the most emotion, impact in the fewest amount of words. You don't want to, you can't just write a big long narrative. So it's a different skill set. Writing a narrative, you can get into someone's head. You can put all that stuff on the page. You can be really creative. You can do all sorts of things, and you don't really have that luxury to do it with scripts. You have to just kind of really filter it down to the essence and get that on the script and hook your reader and go from page to page.
I think it's safe to call you an overachiever.
Possible. I wouldn't call myself a type A. I tend to be pretty relaxed, but yeah, I don't know what causes me to be an overachiever. I think I'm just afraid of death more than most people. You feel like, you just want to accomplish a lot. You want to travel, you want to eat different foods, you want to just express yourself, and you just feel like there's not enough time for all that.
Yeah, I feel that. I've got a very big birthday next month, and
Oh, God.
it's very big, and it's like I'm in my third act, and and I'm starting to get desperate, So
Yeah. I feel that.
Yeah. But if you can create an outlet as you have, and listen, nothing motivates us more than death.
Yeah.
So but again, I'm this side of you that you're not just a filmmaker, and again, I just feel like that's really important, because so many of our members are so ensconced in their lives, and that they don't have the time to write, or they don't have the time to make a movie. But the truth is that they really do have the time. They just haven't figured out how to budget that time, or they just don't have the motivation enough to do it. I always say that we always make time for the things that we want to make time for, and the things that we don't want to make time for, we have excuses. And I mean, I think you're just a clear example of that. We can really do whatever it is that we want to do if we just figure out how to budget the time, and of course you really have to want to do it. How badly do you want to do it? And you want to do it pretty badly.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes I'm writing a book, and maybe I only have time in a day to write one sentence at best, but I still find time just to put that one sentence on the page or go back and revise the page. I always try to find just a couple minutes to do something. And if I find that I'm not interested in doing that, then I just don't pursue it. It's not worth it, because I got a whole phone full of ideas that I could pull from and start over again. So, if you find that you're working on something, you just can't get motivated to do it, it's probably because it's just not speaking to you, and you need to just let it go and move on to something else.
Ramesh, any final questions?
One last one here.
Okay.
When writing your novels, do you apply script writing rules like beats, for example, to push the story forward?
No, it's probably I should, but I'm very unstructured with everything. I'm what do they call it, from the hip, or hipster, or what do they call it? I'm very much like that when I do anything. I will know exactly where I want to go with this act or with this scene. I know where to want to end up, or I start and end, but how I get there, I don't know, because ideally what I'm doing when I'm writing is giving the characters life and letting them kind of do their thing and speak with their own will and act. And in some cases, they just do stuff they don't expect. I have a story I wrote called Pupper King, which I'm trying adapting right now. But and there's this one character, they get to the riddling witch in the forest, and you have to pass her riddles and stuff to get through. And one of the characters gets off his horse and slices her head off, and they move on. And I didn't think of that. And then he gets cursed. In the rest of the book, he's got this terrible curse now that everyone has to kind of fix. I couldn't have thought of that in advance. I just let him talk and be himself, and then he moved the story. And if you try to get him back on track, your characters are going to resist that. So I just kind of gave up at some point. I'm like, all right, dudes, just do whatever you want to do. As long as you get to point B, where I need you to be at this point, just get us there. You do whatever you want. And if you do something interesting, fine, I'll take that and I'll move in a different direction. And I just feel like, you got to kind of trust your characters.
Interesting. And so we kind of hinted upon this a little bit earlier, but sort of what's the future projection for the film? Is it scheduled for any upcoming film festivals? What are you hoping for? Where can our members see the movie?
Yeah, it's showing actually this week, and if you're fortunate to live in Brazil, it's showing at the Fantaspoa Film Festival yesterday and tomorrow, and it's online. It's locked in Brazil. It just showed at Panic Fest in Kansas City. I think the next festival is going to be the Malibu Film Festival, which should be online, and I think that's coming up in the next few weeks. I don't know if it'll be theatrical for that one. And then it's going to be Days of the Dead. That's in LA at some point, I think in June or August. It's playing in Scotland in a couple weeks.
We have members from Scotland. So
yeah.
Let us know.
The Done Dead Film Festival in Scotland came to us and said, and which was lucky for me. They're doing a David Cronenberg retrospective for one thing, so I'm really fortunate to be alongside Cronenberg. But then most of the films they picked were made by women, which I think is great. But I was one of the few guys directors that they picked, and so that got picked. But unless you live in Scotland, you're not going to see that one. And there's a few other that have decided but won't let me announce. And I think there's about 30 other festivals we're waiting to hear back from. So wow. There's a good chance at some point over the next, until October, December, you'll be able to catch it online, if not in person. I probably would recommend in person. I would assume you probably get a better impact. But if you go to my website, abruptio.com, or to the Facebook page, Abruptio Film, then I think we'll give most of our updates as they come online.
All right. Well, we wish you a lot of luck. Thank you for sharing the movie.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
With
Great
us.
To be here.
Thanks to all the members who tuned in, and keep an eye out for Evan's Abruptio.
Yo.
Thanks so much, Evan. We really
Thank
appreciate
you. Good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.